I'm going to call to order the May 3rd work session. I want to welcome everybody who is viewing and everybody that's present. We have an agenda before us. If everybody can have a chance to take a look at it to see if there's anything that needs to be added or changed. When I wanted with the board to look specifically at the consent agenda, items F1 through 4. If there's no objection, we can move to approve the agenda as it is with the consent items going on to the May 17th meeting.
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion, we have a second. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed. Motion carries. Called everybody's attention. We do have the, I believe, representatives from North Carolina State University is going to come for the presentation of the Local Government Engagement Partnership Award. I believe they'll be coming on the 17th. Going on to new business under G1, the Fire Marshal. This is page 22 of our agenda today. Actually, yeah, page 22. It's the approval of proposed changes to Odell, Enochville, and Kannapolis rural fire districts in public hearing on the 17th. Steve, already up. Thank you, sir.
Good afternoon. Just basically here for a review and an update on the changes to the Odell, Kannapolis rural and Enochville fire districts. At this time, the county has received the contract for fire protection from the city of Kannapolis, and that is with county staff and being processed. Within the last 2 weeks, the state has come in and inspected the new Odell station along with the 2 Kannapolis stations that will be covering the changes. Everything went well with the inspections. The only thing that the state is holding up on giving us a pass on the 9S inspection will be the action by this board to approve the changes. Once that's done, we'll send them a copy of the resolution and they'll send us a letter. So at this point, the only thing left is to hold the public hearing and adopt an ordinance amending the county code of ordinance. Currently, the written descriptions of the fire districts are found in Article 3 Special Acts of the Cabarrus County Code of Ordinance. These written descriptions are outdated. What we'd like to do is we recommend moving the maps to Chapter 34, which is the fire prevention section. That's where all the information on the fire departments is found. That will make it easier to locate and accessible to the public. So, again, just hold a public hearing, adopt an ordinance amending the county's code of ordinance for those.
Are there any questions for Mr. Langer at this time?
I'll make a motion that we put it on new business for a public hearing.
Okay, we have a motion to place this under new business for a public hearing. Second?
Second.
We have a motion, we have a second. On when the presentation is given on the 17th, if you could update us. We discussed it at some length at, I believe, in March about that the Cabarrus County residents, we're not going to lose service. There's not going to be a hiccup in service. They're going to be providing, and in fact, service is going to be provided. So if you can address that, as also address, the last time we met, you spoke about their fire tax
And
insurance will be going down.
Yes, sir.
If you'll address that as well to make certain that is part of your presentation. I think it's important for all of the Cabarrus County residents to understand that.
Will do.
Okay?
Thank you.
Thank you very much. With the motion and a second, all in favor say aye.
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 All opposed. Motion carries. Next we have is on G2 is the approval and project application for potential debt issuance of the qualified school construction bonds for Kannapolis City School Systems. Mr. Day.
Thank you. You may remember hearing about qualified school construction bonds in the past, some time ago, and because of the way they were structured, there was virtually no interest in them and nowhere to sell them. And consequently, there's been a change in the structure so that now they no longer carry a tax credit for the investors, but rather they do have an interest rate where they would earn money, and then the federal government would pay the issuer for the interest, so they become 0% interest in that fashion instead of the tax credit fashion. There does appear to be more interest in this structure, and we've been in touch with the Local Government Commission to try and arrange a sort of different way of paying these. The next 5 years for the county in terms of its ability to take on any additional cost is kind of bleak. So we discussed with the Local Government Commission the possibility of postponing the creation of a sinking fund to pay for these. So let me explain quickly. These bonds are basically paid in a lump sum at the end of the term. There's no sort of annual payment as we normally experience. However, the Local Government Commission, in wanting to arrange for prudent finances for the local governments, would require setting up a sinking fund in which the county would make contributions to. So by the time you get to the end of the term, the money is there to pay the bill. So what we discussed with the Local Government Commission was to delay the creation of the sinking fund for 5 years. And we have the staff at the Local Government Commission giving us the okay for that. That is, they will recommend to the Local Government Commission itself that it would approve that 5-year delay. So that being the case, and understanding that in 5 years someone has to start making payments to the sinking fund, then we would recommend to move forward with this. There's $3.5 million or so worth of projects Kannapolis has submitted. On your drives there, you'll see that the Cabarrus school system is considering a number of projects totaling over $11 million. The school board has not voted on those projects yet. So we would assume then that by the time the regular board meeting occurs, that the school board would have taken action and you would have something to consider for Cabarrus also. This action that would be taken on the 17th would not be binding for the county. It's simply an application that's required that would be submitted then before the deadline, and then the bonds themselves have to be sold by the end of this calendar year. But the action itself is not binding. It would come back to you before anything actually occurred.
I saw an email today from the county school system, but I don't, is that part of what we have on the, is all?
Right, that's where that came from.
Okay.
So that's the list of projects that is on the agenda for the Cabarrus County Board of Education.
Okay. Where was that information?
It was in a separate document.
Look on the bottom. You got another tab on the bottom. Go to the right.
No, I only have one.
And if you open up that hard drive, there you go.
Okay.
Oh.
Well, even the Kannapolis, the one from Kannapolis City Schools, it says that they're going to present it to their board to the, no, that's at their meeting next week, so they still haven't approved theirs, I don't think.
We didn't have the list from Cabarrus
Yeah.
even in time to put into this. We just.
No, I know that, but I thought you insinuated that Kannapolis had approved theirs, but both of them should
That's
approve
right.
next week prior to our meeting in 2 weeks, so that we would see their final list and we would be able to go forward.
Correct.
And they all understand that it's still subject to approval, that us doing this action is just moving along the process, but that at this point in time, until the LGC approves, that we can't guarantee anything, right?
I can't say with certainty that they understand that.
Okay. You have made an effort to inform them
But
of that.
we will send something out to that effect.
Okay. That would be helpful. I think the list looks pretty good. I mean, when I look at it, it's a lot of things that, roofs, HVAC units, chillers, some technology wiring and things that, you know, otherwise right now, or at least anytime in the near future, I don't see that we're going to come, we haven't been able to come up with those funds. Renovations, windows, you know, things like that. And some of those chillers are pretty expensive. So if we could make this work, it seems to me like this would be a good way to work on it. The other comment that I would make is, if sometime, I like to be optimistic, but if sometime between, if this gets approved, between now and 5 years, when we're scheduled to make the payments, if things turn around, then it might be prudent to try to put funds in, start that fund sooner than 5 years out, if there were funds available. And I'm sure that that's what.
If there are
our-
funds available, we would be happy to do that.
That's what I mean. I said that. I'm certain that our very qualified financial department and our county manager would look to do that, so that those years would be lessened then, because they'd be minimized a little bit by making earlier contributions. I'd make a motion to put this on the new business.
Okay. We got both the Kannapolis and the
Yes.
Cabarrus second. Well, a couple of things that I would like to note is, and I'll bring them back up on the 17th, is I would want to, in looking at the Cabarrus County Schools, in the chair-vice chair meeting, we have consistently heard issues regarding Royal Oaks, but there's nothing here helping Royal Oaks. There is, and number one, so I'm concerned that in doing this, are we going to be asked in 18 months, we need a replacement school for Royal Oaks, which they know that we do not have the monies to do that. So I wonder why Royal Oaks is not put down here. Second is, and I don't know if, I'll be happy to contact the Board of Education myself, but in regards to Northwest, Concord High School, and Central, and the other schools, have the principals been contacted, and do they think that these are the more important areas? For instance, Central Cabarrus, do they consider the 5 things that are listed down here the top 5 priorities for the best way the monies can be spent, or is this something that is coming from administration? Which I don't have the answer to that, but I certainly think the principals would have a good idea about what's the most efficient use of their money, the money being spent at their schools. So that's a question that I will have on the 17th, is have the principals been contacted, or do the principals understand what's being spent at their schools? Third is the $11.1 million that is listed down here, if these bonds get sold, is this how the money has to be spent, or does money go to the school system and then it can be spent any way that they see fit once they receive it? So even though we get a list of items 1 through, say, 20, if they come up with a new list.
The bonds themselves don't require a list of items as you would, say, for example, with a general obligation bond. So where the proceeds are spent from the bonds would be dependent upon whatever kind of agreement the school board and the Board of County Commissioners have reached.
Okay. Because I know at Concord, a lot of discussions were about, I thought it was in the cafeteria itself, and this addresses some of it. I don't know if it addresses it all. Okay.
I mean, the only thing I can tell you is that I seriously doubt that too many schools, including Concord High, would pick a chiller as their #1 thing to have replaced, but at almost $900,000, that's a maintenance thing that needs to be done, because we're not going to come up with the money. But the other items in that list, I am certain came from the principal and staff.
Okay.
Now, I can't weigh in on anybody else's, but that second one, enclose the courtyard, additional
Yeah,
dining
so did
area for Concord High School, that is the one that you were talking about. There's a courtyard in the middle of the building, and they're going to put a roof on it and a floor in it and make the cafeteria bigger. That's the suggestion. And I think your point about the amount of money is important, that we need to look at, because obviously, other than some that are down to the $1 amount, most of those are guesstimates. And so that would be the thing, to make sure that they came back with the actual amounts, and then presumably some of these are going to be high and some of them will be a little bit low. And that's kind of like what we've done on the COPS, where we've done the other bonds. You can move it between projects, you just can't move it to something else. So we would need to make sure that, if one item went over 5,000 and another item was under 5,000, I don't think that's a big deal. But if they ended up with an extra 100,000 and tried to do a whole new project, then they should owe the courtesy of coming back with it. So, but I agree with your concerns.
Yeah, is there, when the school system is contacted, can we also find out about this wireless? Because Concord Middle, server, switchers, and wireless is 205. And in Robinson High School, right below it, is switches and wireless is 300,000. Robinson's definitely a much newer school, and I wouldn't think that switches.
Well, one of the problems, I know in the past, for some of the high schools, and there's no need to make a judgment call at this point in time, but some of the phone systems that were put in, within 3 years, no longer were getting service from the manufacturers, and they got junk. And they've had, over the years, the county has spent money to replace some systems as a part of it's what got bid and what was in the project. I mean, I don't know any other details than that. So, servers and switches and wiring can easily, Robinson's not that old, but it was under construction 10 years, it's 10 years old.
Mhm.
And it doesn't take long for technology to get out of date. So, some of those things, I don't know, we don't see in here about telephone systems, but I know that was an issue with that whole group of schools that was built at the same time. Whoever the manufacturer was either went out of business or there was something in there and they couldn't get any of the parts fixed, and it got to the point where can't fix anything, so they had to replace them. So I don't know if that's the same, but Robinson is definitely a much larger school than Concord Middle School is, just square footage wise. I guess that's what plays in there. I don't know. I haven't talked to anybody about each of these individual items other than the ones at Concord.
Yeah.
A couple of things I see to add to that is that I wonder about with the phone system wearing out for 3 years, that how good a job was done by the architects or whoever in choosing that phone system to begin with. It would go out of, so be basically obsolete in such a short period of time.
I can assure you that at the time, the school board asked the same questions.
Okay.
You remember that? The school board asked the same questions, and we're none too happy to spend technology dollars in those areas.
Yeah.
Instead of.
Essentially disposable phone system, what
Yes,
you're
instead of
looking at.
what they should have been spent in. So we agree, when I was in that capacity, and Commissioner Minot was too, we would agree with you on that sentiment.
The other thing is that I'm sensitive to this because I personally, when I was in high school 35 years ago, we come across this situation as well. And I know that we've had some people make comments to me about the Concord High gym, is that when we do renovate the weight room at one high school and a gym at the other high school, what happens next year when suddenly the other high school is saying, well, you renovated their gym for them, why can't you renovate our gym, or vice versa with the weight rooms?
The weight
Let's see
room-
about athletic improvements, or maybe put them in one category together.
The weight room at Concord High School is now in part of the vocational building, or the CTE
Well, I know, I've seen a weight
building,
room, believe me, yeah. I
which
know.
which is taken away, and that's why you have those two items, because
Yeah.
the idea is to add more career technical education
Yeah.
at that school, and you can't do that because the weight room takes up half the building.
Yeah.
And
Oh, yeah.
as
Yeah,
a
I'm-
result, they lost.
I'm not saying they don't need it, I'm
something.
just saying.
No, I agree with you.
Yeah, I'm just
But then
saying
if you
that-
look down at Northwest, it's got their track and field and some other restrooms and stuff. And maintenance, facilities and maintenance do a bunch of that. They just can't quite get everything out of facilities and maintenance.
Wasn't the gym at Northwest the one that burned several
It
years ago?
burned, and
that
then
we
it had to
it
be rebuilt.
Rebuilt, and now
Yeah.
we're renovating it?
No.
No, that's a different one.
Okay.
Well, that says gym improvements. I'm not even gonna say anything about Northwest Cabarrus High School's gym, main gym.
Yeah.
Have you been in there?
Now, I have to say, I mean, I do have to
There's
disclose, I have not been in that
it's,
gym.
your seating is, I don't know how many feet up.
About
and
8 feet up off the ground.
If you run,
and-
you don't have this much space between the court and a brick wall. It is
Oh,
probably
okay.
the worst facility as far as a gym
Okay.
goes. I'll give them credit for that one, and they don't want credit for it, but when it was built poorly. I have no idea what that actually means for gym improvements, but they have classrooms in their gym.
Okay.
It's probably renovating some classroom space, PE,
Okay.
health, that's right there next to that main gym. But I don't know offhand until they
Okay.
approve it and
Okay.
whatnot. But it is
That's right.
pretty bad.
Okay.
I'd just like to comment that I know, unless it's changed, but when I was serving on the board, all of these decisions were made, put forward by the individual schools and prioritized by the individual schools, and then they all came into the pot, and that's how they got on the list, the top ones in the priority list.
Yeah.
So I'm going to assume, which you should never do, that that's how these were arrived at. But I think it'd be good for us to check on that, since you did mention the Royal Oaks.
Yeah.
What happened to their requests, because they're bound to have had a whole bunch of them as well. So,
So, any other discussion at this time? We have a motion, we have a second to place this under new business. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Next we have is presentation of proposed fiscal year 2011 budget.
Oh, you'll have to wait for the 17th for that.
We have that as G3 today,
Happy
though.
birthday.
We have a motion to place this under new business.
So,
All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries. G4.
Was that also to set the public hearing, Mr. Chairman?
Mm,
The 21st?
No, we're just presenting it to us so that we can start
Oh, we're
reading
going to
it.
vote on the 20, vote on the 17th?
I'm not voting on the 17th.
Come on.
No, I mean, yeah, no.
That's good. It's a
No,
good
no.
one. No tax increase.
That's right, then never mind, I just see now what,
That's right.
Well, actually, this comes from 2 months of missing the work session, and I just got out of the habit of it. You know, actually, we're going to hear, and then on the 17th, we will set the public hearing. We're not setting the public hearing tonight for the 21st.
No.
Okay,
Uh,
got it.
On G4 is solid waste Cabarrus County construction and demolition landfill revised fee schedule. Mr. Payne and Mr. Grant.
Thank you, Chairman White, Board of Commissioners. We come here today before you to request that the flat rate fee that is currently on our fee schedule at the landfill be removed. It was originally approved to attract demolition contractors during the Pilatex project, which it did. We generated quite a amount of C&D waste out there from that project. But this option allows construction and demolition haulers to deliver loads to our landfill in roll-off trucks in containers no larger than 40 yards and receive a flat rate of 8 tons or a cost of $240 per load. That is, if that load equals the 8 tons or exceeds the 8 tons. We currently have haulers that are taking loads of their material from construction job sites back to their facility, unloading those containers which would not normally exceed the 8 tons, loading them into containers, packing the material in there, putting them on trucks that are licensed to haul heavier loads on the highways, bring them to our facility, and get that 8-ton flat rate fee. If we continue to operate like this, we will continue to lose revenue at the landfill. And our request to you guys is that we remove that option to these haulers. We've had loads come in excess of 14, 16 tons, some even larger than that. But
If we remove that restriction, what do we go to?
we don't, they will be charged per ton, up
Okay.
to whatever ton that they bring in. If they bring in a 9-ton charge, we will charge them the $31 a ton,
Okay.
just whatever the load weighs at the tear weight of that load.
And the $31 covers our expenses to handle each ton?
And
Operation, the whole thing?
it operates our whole landfill,
Okay.
solid waste, household hazardous waste program, currently all of the programs under our solid waste division.
Okay. And it does not affect residents coming in with the the 5 32-gallon bags? That stays the same? This
It
is
does
just
not.
for C&D?
That's correct. It will only affect the construction and demolition commercial haulers, unless The only way it would affect a resident coming into the landfill is if they bring, well, it wouldn't, because they're not going to be bringing loads that large.
Well, if they bring a ton of garbage, then.
Well, yeah, they would not be bringing that type of load,
Right.
of that quantity into the
Right.
landfill.
Any other questions? We have a motion to place this under the consent agenda. We have a motion. We have a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed. Motion carries.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Payne. Next we have is G5, the legislative agenda. This is what we discussed at our retreat. Mr. Day.
Well, I've put in here for your information, your 2009 legislative agenda, which would probably be the starting point, and I suspect you might want to change some of the things on here. I didn't make any recommendations to that effect, but you may be interested in doing that. That's followed by some information from the Association of County Commissioners with legislative briefs on 3 items I believe that they have put out this year. In addition, I've included the legislative agenda and actions taken from the from the County Commissioners Association. So there's a lot of information here. In addition to that, the staff provided some information on, if I can scroll down to it, it's pretty far down, mostly from the Tax Administrators Association, some items related to that area, plus, let's see, hold on. I think I must have missed that one.
Tax and finance.
Tax and finance, did you find it?
67.
61, thank you.
You're at 68.
How about that?
You go there.
Oh,
do
it's
the
spinning.
whole page.
Okay. Thank you for your help.
That's what you want?
Yeah. So there's several items here from the tax administrator, as I mentioned previously, as well as something here on the moratorium on new and expanded exemptions. I'm sorry, that is from them. I thought there was one from Mr. Marshall. I think actually he was just pointing out the road changes or the possibility of counties being made responsible for maintaining roads, which is also in the Commissioners Association agenda, so we didn't put that down. So I'm not sure exactly where you want to go from here precisely. I just put all the information out here. These are all issues that you've dealt with before. I would think that if there's anything on your previous year's legislative agenda that you do not wish to include next year, then you'd certainly want to remove that and make that change known to our legislative delegation, whom we'll be meeting with on May 19th. I know it's a lot of information.
I've always thought that whenever we give a legislative agenda, it needs to be the fewer items, the better. And frankly, I don't know if they're going to be able to do much. I've heard where the session's going to be either 4 to 6 weeks, no more than 8 weeks for this short session.
And certainly, there's no need to duplicate anything that the Commissioners Association is already lobbying for. They have plenty of people up there doing that, and so you can just do a ditto on that and let the legislative delegation know that you're in support of the Commissioners Association's
Mr.
legislative
Chairman,
agenda.
the number 2, we really haven't discussed that again.
No, we can
since
take that
was-
off for right now.
Pardon?
Number 2, we can certainly take off for right now.
I don't think at this particular time in the country, would be an appropriate thing
Right.
to do. We need a little more calmer atmosphere to do something like that.
I agree. Does anybody have an objection to taking 2 off? Because in fact, what we were talking about, the last time we talked about it, is that when we move forward with it, that would be from a vote at large. Commissioner Pruitt brought that up, And that's certainly something that we can take under, but there's no reason to, number 2 is not something we had discussed for a legislative agenda for this year.
There are some changes since the last time you discussed this. So even, number 3, the local bill for transportation needs, there was some legislation passed, but it wasn't exactly like this. Plus, as the chairman said, I don't think there's going to be much that happens in this session.
Yeah. I think number 7 definitely needs to stay on there, is that it's amazing how much DSS is having to speak to people about voter registration, about every time they come in to verify if they've registered, if they haven't registered, why haven't they registered? That's just very, very cumbersome. So I think 7 needs to definitely stay on there. 8 is another thing that's interesting, is the annexation laws. I know that was going to be brought up the last time, but I don't think it was ever approved.
That's right. There weren't any changes that were actually made. There has been some discussion that it may come up again this session, or then again, it may wait until the long session. It just depends on the appetite of the legislature.
There were 2 or 3 things that were discussed at the district meetings, also as the regional meetings for risk management pools, that are things that are kind of percolating beneath the surface too in Raleigh. And one of those is there's been a move on to try to create, still removed, to try to create the Local Tort Claims Act, which would basically, with the State Tort Claims Act, there's an exchange that immunity is taken away, but at the same time, there's a limit on the, what is on the settlement or on a claim. And I think the Local Tort Claims Act that's been proposed has been to eliminate immunity but not eliminate the cap, or not impose a cap. So it would be, there's not an exchange there. And they're kind of keeping an eye on that. The other one is one that would switch, and we got 2 attorneys sitting here, so they probably correct me, but the comparative versus contributory negligence on a civil suit, and that could affect settlement cost on a lawsuit. That where you would not have to, if somebody the only way if somebody was only partially to blame, then they would still get some sort of settlement, versus the way it is now. I guess it's all or nothing, or 51% is the rule now.
No, it's all or nothing.
Yeah, all or nothing.
If you contributed all to your own injuries, then you receive
and
nothing.
that could have some effect.
That's if you
situations.
raise contributory negligence as a
Yeah.
defense.
And the third one was and if I don't think we got involved, we're not involved much in it, but the ABC system. There's a discussion about privatizing it, and loss of revenue that I don't think we get any revenue at all from it.
It's Concord.
Yeah, it's all in Concord, so. Anyway, so.
Since there's so much here, maybe a suggestion, if the chairman, vice chairman, and I get together, make a recommendation to the rest of the board?
That'll be fine. Sometime after tomorrow. Do we want, we have a motion to place this under new business for?
So moved.
Second.
The 17th. We have a motion, we have a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed. Motion carries.
That was fun.
That's it for right now. My question is, how are the applications for the Food Policy Council going?
Very, very good, actually. In fact, some have come in while we've been sitting here.
Wow.
But it's very impressive, actually, the folks that are sending those in. Very impressive.
Well, if we can get those as soon as we can prior to the 17th, because we're going to be discussing and deciding who's going to be on the council on the 17th. You know,
This council's not going to just tell us to take toys out of Happy Meals, are they?
we're not going to have Happy Meals.
Yeah, they might suggest, yeah, that Happy Meals are a bad idea. They should only be toys and no food.
If you saw
Or as
Jamie
Michael Pollan
Oliver's,
says, food-like substances. You know.
Yeah, if you saw Jamie Oliver's Food Revolution show on TV, you wouldn't eat another chicken nugget. Of course, he says they're not made like that in the United States, but that was enough to make you
I
a
have.
little sick.
Bob has experience with it.
Yeah, I can tell you that.
The next matter,
We'll have them take the food out of it.
Yep.
Yeah, the toy's probably more nutritious. Well, that'd be for tomorrow.
so if we can get those prior, that would be,
Cartoon.
We can start sending those out right away.
if we can get those, you know, as soon as we can prior to the 17th, that way we can talk about it. Because I think the board, it was going to be between 13 and 21.
That's the recommendation. You know, I can't say with certainty how many we'll end up with, but if it's close to 13, I would suggest that you go ahead and make appointments, and then we can follow it up with,
Okay.
with filling it out.
Okay. Next thing I wanted that under H2 is, I think this is what I asked Mrs. Honeycutt to put on. I'm the board representative to the Cabarrus Visitors Bureau, and there are 3 seats that come up on June 30th for reappointment, and it was our liaison right now is Noelle Scott. She is currently the vice chair of the Convention and Visitors Bureau, and we are to give a recommendation of who we would ask or who we'd like to see on the board, because we can fill a total of 3 seats, if I'm not mistaken. 3 seats. Mike is serving as 1 county seat. I'm serving as 1 county seat, and Mrs. Scott serving as a 3rd county seat. Her term is up June 30th, and I wanted to be able to get back to the CVB, who our recommendation is, so that they can formally send us a letter of the CVB's request, as well as the chamber sending in their request. So if y'all do not have an objection, I would ask that Noelle or Mrs. Scott be reappointed for another 3-year term. Excuse me, 3-year, 3-year term. See if we can do that. The next matter, I-1, is something that I asked to be put on because, as I was thinking about it, is there's a lot of boards and that we are members of, or liaisons that we're members of, that kind of give an update about as meetings happen, so that in months to come, is if something's going on, if we can apprise each other about where, you know, what's going on with that board, such as the CVB, what's going on there, and you know, some of the other boards that we're on. It would be good to have an update, sort of keeping everybody apprised. In that vein, I went to the Department of Social Services meeting last month. It was a good meeting, and there was a lot of discussion about probably going to be increased services being used. There's also a discussion about CAP, which I don't remember the acronym or what it broke down for, but we are a pilot project for CAP, and what that is the pilot program is allowing people that are receiving services to independently contract for their own services, which reduces the cost to the county, but it also gives that person a more control over whom he or she is going to help with their day-to-day activities, so they can stay at their home more longer than going straight into a nursing home or going to a home. That has had a lot of success. In fact, there's a pretty large waiting list, and unfortunately, the governor is looking to cut things, and that is one of the programs that may be cut. although it is saving the county money, and it's saving, and it's also saving the state money. So that's one thing. Another is the DSS, there's going to be probably an increase in services because of people are going to have a larger opportunity to receive services in regards to their income. And the concern is that it's, the Department of Social Services cannot look at reserves. So if a individual has substantial assets but does not have substantial income, they would qualify for services. And there's no limit as to a time period or how long that's going to take, but Governor Perdue, in her infinite wisdom, opted into that program here recently, so that's going to potentially increase the applications for services and having to look to see. And as I understand it, if somebody comes in, they are to be seen that day, unless they come in after 4 o'clock in the afternoon. So if at 5 o'clock, if they have 50 people waiting in the library, they have to see all 50 people unless one of those persons or all of those persons allow them to set an appointment to come back. They are supposed to be seen every day, all day, so, or prior to them leaving, which they've done a good job in kind of rotating schedules. But that's one thing that concerns me, and I raised it. I spoke to the chair of the JCPC, and she says that they are in the process of getting a budget, that there's been $700,000 in requests for funding for the Juvenile Crime Prevention Council, and they have about half of that to award. So they're in the middle of doing the budget. And I think, the board, Cabarrus County Board of Education tonight is taking up redistricting as it relates to redistricting students to Northwest. And I believe that some of us, if not all of us, have received quite a few emails asking us to oppose it. But that is a school board decision. In fact, I was called this afternoon asking me what my opinion was and whether I was going to veto it or oppose it. But I think they're taking that, well, they haven't taken it up yet. I think their meeting starts at 6. That's on their plate for right now. And Thursday or Friday, I received Cabarrus Rowan Urban Area Metropolitan Plan Organization. They passed a resolution opposing transferring of the secondary road programs to the counties. That's a resolution. It's in response to Senate Bill 758, which would, if ratified, would transfer responsibility for maintenance of secondary roads from the state to the counties. And I believe that's all that I have. If anybody else has anything else, I can pass that. Oh, I'm sorry. Anybody else have anything about the boards that they're on, or think about it? Yes, sir. Commissioner Farouk.
Just a couple. And one of them's on PBH, Piedmont Behavioral Health Care. 3 things with that. We had our annual board retreat last week. There's a lot going on in the mental health community in North Carolina. Has been since I've been on this board in 2001. They are working now to look at, because the waivers that Piedmont is under with their Medicaid funding has now been extended to the entire state, and looking at how that model is going to be copied across the state. And several different alternatives are being looked at, from Piedmont merging with some other LMEs to contracting services out to providing consulting agreements with other LMEs. There's I think there's like 24 now across the state, LMEs, and they're going to try to get down to 7. One of the challenges there is at Piedmont, there's just a discussion right now with 5 county mental health services, which is area northeast of Raleigh, and also with Orange Person, Caswell County, which is northwest of Raleigh, of merging with those 2 LMEs and forming one LME. The only problem is if you put 4 people from each county, you're going to end up with a board that's half the size of the legislature.
So I want to ask, how does a person address their concerns with?
Well, the way it's set up, the the board for Piedmont is primarily a business board. There is a community, it's called CFAC, which is Consumer Affairs Advisory Council, which is made up of consumers, and that's the board, that's the mechanism by which consumers can go to Piedmont and raise concerns, and they listen to those concerns that CFAC body does. That's appointed by the board, by the Piedmont board. But so anyway, that's one thing. The other thing is, if you go out on Kannapolis Parkway, you'll see the grading out there. That's the new headquarters that's being constructed for PBH. The construction is moving along. A couple of things they found, it's been out there. They discovered 2 oaks out there that they believe are over 300 years old that are, they said, may be 2 of the oldest standing trees in the county. So measures have been taken. They've modified some of the parking areas in order to preserve those oak trees. And so it's going to be pretty interesting. And but anyway, the other one was the Wasatch. We took the last meeting, brought up the idea of updating the master plan, and there was much discussion. It created much discussion on the board, Wasatch board. But really, what came out of it?
Positive discussion. on
Yeah,
the
yeah, there
Wasatch
was some.
board.
This was decided. The board, rather than going to a full new master plan, was to look at doing some sort of capacity analysis and turn it over to staff who went back and is going to be bringing us back a report this month on what can be done as far as doing the capacity analysis now that we know what water we've got and what we can handle as a county as far as growth is concerned. So
Is that going to be growth both residential and commercial?
I'm sure it will
Okay.
be, yeah. And that's what they're going to bring back this month, is some alternatives for how to do that. So that, once we discuss it this month, we can bring that up as far as residential versus commercial.
Okay. Anybody else? Commissioner Poole?
Well, Kannapolis City Schools is working on their superintendent search. So I know they've been busy with that. And Kannapolis City is still working on the TIF financing, but I don't think they've gotten any final responses on that yet. COG over in Charlotte, I have one more meeting to go to. And they're working, I mean, the committee that they set up to try to figure out what COG wants to be is apparently still meeting, but they meet at lunchtime, and I can't make those. So I made the one meeting and put my 2 cents worth in. But I know they're still working on that. I have no idea when they're going to come up with all of that. I believe that staff has been inquiring of a few things at COG to make sure about the Region F Aging Advisory Committee, and because, you know, not all of the COG dues, some of the COG dues was matching some of the funding that flows through them to the county, and I would presume that once staff gets that figured out with them, then we'll get a report on what that will be, and maybe that should be in the budget, I would presume, in a couple weeks. So let's see, I went to one transportation meeting. They apparently like to meet every other month, and every other month is in Salisbury. So the Cabarrus meeting doesn't seem to happen on these months. But anyway, so I've only attended one of those, and I was still trying to figure out what all they were talking about. So I didn't. They were very confusing that night, and I kept looking at Jonathan, who was sitting behind me, like, can you tell me when to chime in here? Because they were going off on a tangent, and I couldn't figure out how to either get on that train or get off of it. I wasn't real certain that night, but it was kind of funny. I've talked to Bob about that too. That's a whole new thing to learn about transportation and everything. So, but you know, hopefully they'll meet next month, since it's an every other month thing now, and I'll have more to bring back next month. You have something?
Just a couple of things. I have been serving on the Department of Aging. I don't know why you chose me for that job, but that's okay. But I have been very impressed with how smoothly that operates, and how many programs they have that the public is not aware of. And I would like, you know, I hope we can work on some ways to get some of their programs out there to the public. But there's a lot more going on there than just square dance lessons and things of that nature. There's a lot of help for citizens with taxes and finding care, and the care that you mentioned, I think they're tied in with that and support that. There's also an effort to initiate a new software program where people, when they go to an agency in the county like Social Services or Department of Aging, that they fill out this form once, and it goes into the computer, and that information can be pulled out selectively according to the people's needs, which helps a lot in that area. I've attended a number of the Soil and Water Board's meetings, and I'm quite interested in that type of thing anyway. And one of the issues that I see is a major issue with no resolution that I can see, is what's happening to our streams from the overdevelopment in the county and the lack of control on the development. And what has happened in the past is that the developments would allow people to purchase the land all the way to the center of the stream on their property, and then it becomes the homeowner's piece of property, and there's very little control of that piece of property. And that's where a lot of the issues are coming from. We heard from someone at the last meeting, and that's just the tip of the iceberg, because of these meetings I've attended, there have been a number of those issues. So I think that's something that really needs to be looked at seriously with the way we handle allowing developments to encroach on the streams and so forth. Unfortunately, there's not a pool of money to do anything for these folks, and I'm not 100% sure whose jurisdiction it comes under. So it's an issue, big issue.
Corey, Mr. Privet, is there anything you want to bring up?
No, I have been impressed from serving on the Partnership for Children Committee of the superb services they're providing in their area. Well-functioning group, and of course, one of their real concerns was state funding, and that potential problem got resolved.
Good. Thank you. Want everybody to remember.
Mr. Chairman, I just thought
Yes.
one other thing. I'm also on the library board. They are going to be having, Concord Library is going to be having a book sale to try to supplement some of their lost revenues, and they will take books from individuals if they will contact the library. They're going
I got a slew of them.
Pardon?
My children have a slew of them.
Right. Well, it's a good activity. It's a good chance to clean out your bookcase.
Thank you for bringing that up, Commissioner Minot, because one thing that I think a lot of people need to be aware of is sometime, my suspicion is in the next 90 days, that the Concord Library is going to have renovations done to it. And I think it's probably sometime in the next 90 to 120 days. The important thing about that is those monies, or the renovations that are going on at the Concord, or will be going on at the Concord Library, are not coming from our operating funds. It's not coming from the taxpayers. It was a gift to the Concord Library from Mrs. Miriam Cannon Hayes in her will. And it was a sizable donation, and that's going to be brought up during our budget, because I want to make certain that those are not taxpayer funds, but those are funds that are going to be in from a private person that gifted them, number one. Number two is our Pam Dubois has been working with the library director, Dana Uri, and they're going to be able to save a lot of, or open up a lot of the area and have a good, efficient use of the monies that are coming in. So that, as I understand it, nothing's going to happen to the outside of the building, but there's going to be some things on the inside. It's going to help out with lighting, help out with reconfiguring to increase space. So it'll be, I look forward to seeing what's going to happen.
Mr. Chairman, one thing to
Yes.
bring up. in relation to the library and Jeff talked about, is it's on the article in the paper about, how we have a lot of volunteers now. They're stepping up to the plate and helping out at the library. And I know that a lot of counties I work with, they also have a large army of volunteers that work in different areas. And I didn't know whether in some of our stuff, John, if there's places, and I know that there's some places it's possible to put a volunteer, but we have opportunities for volunteers in other areas of county government that, with the budget like it is, we've had to do some cutbacks, but to help some with some of the service provision, is there places for other volunteers people want to volunteer to help in different areas? I'm not sure if there's a way we can publicize that or want to publicize it or.
Well, certainly it works in some areas better than others.
Right, I understand that. So.
Cooperative Extension, for example, has just hundreds of volunteers that work with those programs. The library, as you mentioned, is another one. Department of Aging has some volunteers that work there. In other cases, it becomes more difficult, but we certainly encourage that in our departments.
Yeah, okay.
And we'll continue to.
I was thinking about even the parks, about helping with cleanup, things like that at parks. And
If they want
I know
to.
as community service workers are a big contributor to cleaning up our parks. And
Yes,
Out
we
there
use
on the
those
weekend, I usually
volunteers
see
from time to time as well.
I usually see a couple of young adults walking around with a bucket and a set of tongs in their hands, so.
I wanted to remind everybody that May the 14th is the EDC's annual stakeholder summit. The registration deadline is this Friday. That's going to be May the 14th from 12 to 1 at the arena and the event center in the Cabarrus rooms. So that if any of y'all have not had a chance to sign up for that, contact Mrs. Honeycutt. She'll be able to get that signed up. Is that correct? I hate to volunteer you without asking, but tomorrow is primary day, so get out to vote if you haven't. The on the water cooler on the water cooler on the website, there are a lot of budget documents for the proposed budget coming up. If you have the opportunity, you may want to check those out and look at it. We do have our budget work sessions on the 25th, 26th, and 27th. 25th, 26th, 27th, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, beginning at 3:30. And I'm not certain what the game plan is right now, but we'll certainly hear from both school systems, the community college system, Health Alliance, Department of Social Services, Sheriff. I think that's it for right now. But look at it, and if there's particular interest, let us know. We do have a closed session on the May the 17th at our regular meeting, at the end of the meeting. And the County Assembly Day is May the 19th in Raleigh. That's May the 19th. And right now, Bob, Commissioner Cruth, and myself have signed up to attend. If anybody else is able to attend, please let Mrs. Honeycutt know. But that's May the 19th, and I think that starts at 9 o'clock in the morning. I think so.
The registration's
so.
at 9. And
Okay.
Yeah, we're going to have this year, Speaker Hackney and Senator Bassnett both are going to speak in the morning session, and then they'll have lunch, and then the afternoon will be reserved for going over to the legislative building.
Okay.
Found out today that they're going to have a barbecue cook-off competition, East and West barbecue for lunch that day, and that's right before we go to barbecue that night, so.
And
So we'll have plenty of barbecue that day.
finally, I did want to let everybody know and let Mr. Day be more specific about it, but our bond rating was upgraded.
Oh.
Well, we already had a AA+ rating from Standard & Poor's, which is just one step below a AAA. So it's really, considering the type of economy we have, and I don't mean the economy as it is nationally, but I mean being in a metro area and being separate from the main engine, it's hard to get beyond a AA+. AAA is usually reserved by the economic engines themselves. So we had a AA+ and then AA's from from Moody's and Fitch. Moody's and Fitch have gone through what they're calling recalibration, which is a recognition that they weren't rating local governments quite the way they should in comparison to the way they rate private entities, private businesses. And so the county received another notch increase, so that now we have a AA+ rating, one step below AAA with all three of the major rating agencies instead of just one. So we're pleased about that. And that rating, that was an adjustment to the ratings that were made just last year during the midst of an economic crisis, and the county's rating was maintained at that point. So we're very pleased about how well we performed financially.
And that was also one of the rating agencies downgraded everybody, and then after hearing our presentation, they returned us back to where we were before. They downgraded all municipalities and all governmental agencies on the local level, if I'm not mistaken.
Right, there had been an announcement that they were going to, just because of general conditions, downgrade every local government. Then they thought better of it, and some, like ours, where they were in front of us at the time, decided they would not do that. So it did occur to some. It had generally, it was going to be a general downgrade to all local governments. We convinced them otherwise.
So that's good news.
What other, are there any other county, I know there's some counties that are AAA in the state, but any other counties that are AAA, AA+, or are we the only ones that's got all three?
I can't remember offhand. There's a handful of AA+ counties. The ones you would think are AAA
Yeah.
Mecklenburg,
Wake.
Wake, and I think Guilford is also.
Yeah.
And Forsyth, I believe. But we can get you a list of that. It's actually on the website for the Treasurer's Office.
That is everything that I know of that I'm supposed to remind everybody about, to inform everybody about, and to tell everybody about. Is there anything else that I may have overlooked or missed, Mrs. Honeycutt? With that, do we have anything else to discuss? We have a motion to adjourn.
Salute.
We have a motion, we have a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
We are adjourned.
Ooh-ah.